Madam President, it is 5 o'clock.
Thank you, Deborah. Welcome to the May 12th, 2020 USD 305 Board of Education regular meeting. My name is Ann Zimmerman, and I am president of the board. We welcome all of you who are joining us virtually. If you would like to follow along with the meeting, you can access the agenda packet by going to the district website, usd305.com. I now call the USD 305 meeting to order. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please be seated. The board policy BCDI, public participation, states that the board may include a time for public forum and may permit, at the discretion of the board president, public comment during agenda items. But during our virtual meetings, we will not open up the meeting for comments. However, if you wish to comment, we encourage anyone to comment by going to our website, usd305.com, and clicking on the Board of Education tab. If you have any trouble with the Board of Education page on the website in the past, please know that it has recently been repaired and it's working better. I would like to take this time to have each board member introduce him or herself alphabetically. Mark.
Mark Bandray.
Emma.
Mute. Emma Doherty.
Tim.
Fletcher.
Scott.
Scott Gardner.
Gabe.
Gabe Grant.
Dana.
Dana Casso.
Thank you. And I'm Ann Zimmerman. I would like to remind board members and the superintendent and all presenters that when speaking, please address yourself by name first. I will ask each of you to state your vote when voting will take place. We're going to start with the agenda. Ms. Exline, are there any changes to the agenda?
Yes, Madam President, we do have an addendum to the personnel report.
Thank you. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda? Mark.
Madam President, I move to approve the agenda with the amendment that Ms. Exline just mentioned.
Do I have a second? Emma seconds. It's been moved and seconded that we approve the agenda as amended. Any discussion on that? Then we will vote. Just a minute. Mark.
Mark Bandray, aye.
Emma.
Emma Doherty, aye.
Jim.
Tim Fletcher, aye.
Scott.
Scott Gardner, aye.
Gabe.
Gabe Grant, aye.
Dana.
Dana Casso, aye.
And I'm Ann Zimmerman. I vote aye. Motion carries. So we are on to the consent agenda items, which include the minutes of the April 28th, 2020 regular meeting, personnel report, financial reports, including the April bills list. It includes the encumbrance listing to Eagle in the amount of $181,113.79 for the purchase of the hardware, maintenance, and support to maintain the server and storage environment that contains the district's VMware servers. It also includes approving the federal Head Start, Early Head Start supplemental grant application, one-time activities in response to COVID-19, one-time funding in the amount of $138,330. It includes approval of the federal Head Start supplemental grant application for summer 2020 programming, and it includes approving the federal Head Start, Early Head Start grant application for cost of living adjustment and quality improvement in the amounts for cost of living adjustments, $99,155, and for quality improvement, the amount of $144,482 For together, those are a total of $243,637. Do I hear a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Madam
Jim?
President,
Oh,
before we make a motion, I have a quick question about item D. I believe
yeah.
this would be for Mr. Christie. The mentions in the agenda that the software licensing and support was approved August of 2019. Of course, that was before I was on the board. I'm just hoping to learn a quick bit more about that. I anticipate upcoming budget tightness, and this may become a common theme as time goes by, but I'm just curious if there's any way we can get by a little bit longer without this expense, what the thoughts are on that.
I'm going to hold that thought for a minute. And Jim, I'm going to let you make the motion. And we will count this as discussion on the motion. How about that? Oh, is that all right? Okay, Jim.
President, I move we approve the consent agenda items as presented.
Thank you. Do I have a second? Dana seconds. It's been moved and seconded that we approve the consent agenda items. So we have a question on the encumbrance listings. Mr. Christie, do you want to answer that question?
Yes, Dwight Christie, Director of IT. You're right. In August, we approved the software side of this. This equipment, at this point, we're looking at replacing the hardware and the support for that hardware for both the servers that we use and for the data storage, which is pretty extensive. At this point in time, the equipment we're using is 8 to 10 years old, which is 2 to 5 years older than what is recommended to go on this equipment. What's prompted us to move at this time, I'll give some kudos to my staff, specifically Bob Hemingway, in keeping this running as long as it has. But at this point in time, the equipment's reached what they call end of life. And when equipment gets end of life, we no longer get updates. We can no longer buy support for it. The big thing on the updates is the idea that means we no longer get security updates. So if there's a vulnerability with this equipment that's identified, hackers, there'll be no fix to prevent hackers from getting access into our systems. That's where the biggest. On top of that, we are having consistent problems with this, especially the servers part of this, parts of them failing. We're constantly replacing hard drives and memory and so forth. And it just kind of got to the point we've limped along with what equipment we have as long as we feel like we're safe to do it. To move forward without replacing the equipment, we have real security and dependability concerns. And by dependability, if this stuff goes down, these servers house Skyward, they house Olio, they house some pretty important software applications run on these servers. And therefore excuse me, I made a mistake there. They do not house Olio, but they do house Skyward. So if this equipment fails and it takes us time to get it back up and running, there's some pretty extensive business practices that don't take place during that interim.
Thank you. Any other
Very good,
questions,
sir.
Mark?
I appreciate that. It sounds like the duct tape and baling wire have run out, so I appreciate that.
That's a good analogy.
Okay, any other discussion on the consent agenda? Then we will vote. Mark?
Mark Vandre, aye.
Emma?
Emma Doherty, aye.
Jim?
Jim Fletcher, aye.
Scott?
Scott Gardner, aye.
Dana?
Dana Costo, aye.
And Ann Zimmerman, aye. Motion carried, 7-0. Next on the
Gabe Grant,
agenda.
aye, too.
Oh, Gabe, did I skip you?
I'm just
Sorry.
so hurt.
Oh, that makes it 7. Okay. I won't forget you next time. Okay. Next on the agenda is the action agenda, which starts with the resolution of the Board of Education's final action to non-renew contracts for non-probationary and probationary teachers for 2020-2021. Erin Wright.
Hi, good evening. I'm Erin Wright. On the last two board meetings, you have approved resolutions related to the non-renewal of teacher contracts. On April 14th, that resolution included 2 non-probationary teachers. On April 28th, that resolution included 2 probationary teachers. We are here tonight and I'm presenting to you a final resolution for final action on the non-renewal of 4 teachers. Those teachers are Annette Hayes, Kimberly Stober, Liliana Peters, and Heidi Weedle. The 2 non-probationary teachers had 14 days from the time we sent the notice related to the intent to non-renew to request a hearing. Neither teacher has done so at this time, so that window has closed. And we're here tonight for you to just take final action on those contracts.
Thank you. Do I hear a motion on that item? Mark?
Madam President, I move we approve the resolution of the board's final action to non-renew contracts for the non-probationary and probationary teachers for 2020-21.
Thank you. Do I have a second? A second. Any discussion on this? Hearing none, we will vote. Mark?
Mark Vandray, aye.
Emma?
Emma Doherty, aye.
Jim? Didn't hear you, Jim.
Aye.
Okay. Now, Scott? Gabe?
Gabe Grant, aye.
Dana?
Dana Costo, I.
And Ann Zimmerman, I vote aye. Motion carried 7-0. Thank you. Next on the action agenda is the textbook adoptions with Tiffany Snyder.
Good evening. This is Tiffany Snyder. And last week I presented textbooks that we are hoping to adopt for school year 2021. If there are not any questions for me this evening, I'm asking for the approval of the textbooks that were presented.
Thank you. You did present on everything last time. Do I hear a motion on that? Do I see a hand for a motion on that? Gabe?
There we go. Madam President, I move we approve textbook adoptions as presented.
Thank you. And Emma seconds, so does Jim. We'll let Deborah decide who to count. So it's been moved and seconded that we approve all these textbooks, American history, psychology, culinary essentials, culinary menus, and culinary professionals, nutrition and wellness, lifespan, human development, AP physics, medical investigations, entrepreneurship, business essentials, AV production, AP language composition, and high school ESL. I think I forgot the culinary internship. All of the new textbooks for those classes. If there's no discussion, then I'll call the motion. Mark?
Mark Vandray, aye.
Emma?
Emma Doherty, aye.
Jim?
Fletcher, aye.
Scott? Gabe?
Gabe Grant, aye.
Dana?
Dana Costo, I.
And Ann Zimmerman, aye. Motion carried 7-0. Next, yes, you're welcome. Thank you. Next on the agenda is addition of high school girls wrestling. Ms. Exline.
Good evening. I'm Lynn Exline, Superintendent, and I am just back for us to approve adding wrestling to the handbook. What we are asking is for the board to approve us adding a girls wrestling program. And if you'll remember last time we talked, I told you that this is really a formality, that we have had girls wrestling for many years. We just haven't called it girls wrestling. We have had a boys wrestling program, and we've allowed our female wrestlers to wrestle in that program. And so at this time, the Kansas State High School Activities Association has added a division of girls wrestling. And so we are asking that we be allowed to add girls wrestling to our high school athletic offerings. And so if there aren't any questions, I am just recommending that you approve the addition of high school girls wrestling as I presented last time.
Thank you. Jim,
Madam President, I move that we approve the addition to high school girls wrestling as presented.
thank you. Dana, we're gonna let Dana second that one. It's been moved and seconded that we approve the addition of high school girls wrestling. Is there any more discussion on this? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. Mark,
Mark Vandray, aye.
Emma,
Emma Doherty, aye.
Jim,
Jim Fletcher, aye.
Scott, Gabe,
Gabe Grant, aye.
Dana,
Dana Costo, I.
and Ann Zimmerman. I vote aye. Motion carried 7-0. Thank you. The next on the agenda is the 2020-2021 Athletic Handbook. Ms. Exline?
Thank you, Madam President. I am going to share my screen to just review the changes that we are recommending. And so are you able to see my screen now?
Yes. We see part of your family there.
Then I'm going to change that. And I don't know that I can.
Can you do a
Okay, hold on.
full screen?
Just a second. I'll move this here. Okay, there we go. So that I'm not displaying my family for all to see. The athletic board recommends updates to the athletic handbook each year. And the recommendations that are before you tonight, this is just a review of what I shared with you last time. On the organization, we would like to, because of the motion and what you just approved, we would like to add wrestling where the girls' sports are noted. And so that's just it as a result of the vote that you just took. And then on page 13, when it comes to middle school track, you'll remember we have a very large number, thankfully, of our middle schoolers who are participating in track. And at South Middle School last year, we had 125 students. And at Lakewood, we had 150 students. And so we are feeling like we need to make permanent the additional coach that we have been adding on an annual basis. Athletic board makes that decision based upon numbers each year. But when we see that that needs to be a permanent add, we bring that forward to the Board of Education. And so at this time, our recommendation would be that we change that 3 assistant coaches to 4 assistant coaches. On that same page where it talks about wrestling, again, as a direct result of the vote that you just took, we need to add the high school combined wrestling, Central and South for girls. And the coaching staff, right now, we're not recommending a head coach. We're recommending that we add an assistant coach to our wrestling program, who then that coach would be designated for our girls wrestling program. Then on the, my next addition is on page 24 of the Athletic Handbook. One of the things that has become a growing concern is making sure that we are paying attention to the heat acclimatization rules. And the Kansas State High School Activities Association has rules that and guidelines to that end. And we are recommending that in our handbook, we just adopt those rules and regulations. And we have placed those, we're recommending that we place their actual recommendations in our handbook. And so it just adds a little bit more structure and clarity for our coaches. And then the last thing is on page 26, and you'll recall that we talked about the eligibility. In USD 305, we require students to be eligible on a semester and a biweekly basis, meaning that if a student is ineligible 2 weeks in a row, not passing 5 new subjects, that they are no longer eligible. But Kansas State High School Activities Association has put new eligibility requirements that are just for the very beginning of the year. at 7th grade and 9th grade. And so this policy change would actually make it to where all 7th graders, right at the very beginning of the year for that first 2 weeks, are eligible, and all 9th graders for that very first 2 weeks are eligible. Then at that point, our local eligibility policies would kick in, and students would have to maintain passing for the 5 or more new subjects. So with that, and then you can see in your packet, the following pages are from the High School Activities Association. That's what we would add. With that, what my recommendation is that you go ahead and approve those adaptations to our athletic handbook.
Thank you. Ms. Exlin, I have a question. When you talk about eligibility, is it just sports or is it all the clubs? What is it eligibility for?
Okay, thank you. Good question. Eligibility would apply to anything that is a Kansas State High School Activities Association activity. And so band and orchestra, in order for our students to be able to participate in competitions for band, for orchestra, for vocal, they have to be eligible as well. So eligibility is not just on the athletic side, it is also on any event that the Kansas State High School Activities Association is the sponsoring agency for.
Thank you. Any other questions?
This is Emma Doherty. I was going to ask now, there is no wrestling in middle school. Is that correct for the girls?
That there is no wrestling in middle school.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
This is Scott Gardner. It's excellent. There's a section in the handbook that's coming up under the discussion agenda where one school lists the previous semester, and at the other school it says the previous quarter. So there's variability in our handbooks as far as whether we're going by semester or quarter. It depends on which school you're at.
Okay, we need to clean that up, and that good catch. Thank you. When we get there, Scott, will you make sure that if you remind me when you see it in there, and we'll go back and double check that, and we will make sure that that matches.
And that's in the middle school, or is that middle school or high school?
I'm looking now, so once we get there, I can.
Okay, you can tell us then. Okay, great.
Yeah, we need to make that match. So thank you for, sometimes those things, we just get better and better all the time. So, and it's because people catch those little things.
Okay, so for the athletic handbook, is there a motion on the approving the athletic handbook for this coming school year? Mark.
Madam President, I move we approve the 2020-2021 athletic handbook as presented.
Do I hear a second or C1? Emma, I'll have you second it. So any discussion on this besides what we've already had? Excuse me. Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. Mark?
Mark Vandre, aye.
Emma?
Emma Doherty, aye.
Jim?
Jim Fletcher, aye.
Scott?
Scott Gardner, aye.
Gabe?
Gabe Grant, aye.
Dana?
Dana Costo, aye.
And Ann Zimmerman, I vote aye. Motion carried 7-0. That is the end of the action agenda. The next part of the agenda is the discussion agenda, and we'll start with capital improvement, the capital improvement plan with Chris Upson. Mr. Upson.
Good evening. I'm Chris Upson. I'm the Executive Director of Maintenance and Operations. I'm going to attempt to share my screen now.
Good luck.
How's that?
Good.
Okay. I'm going to go over the first reading of the fiscal year 21 capital improvement plan. The agenda for tonight, we're going to spend a little bit of time talking about the completed projects from fiscal year 20. We'll talk about fiscal year 21 projects, and then I'll briefly go over our set aside accounts. Fiscal year 20, we completed 29 projects, and this is the first year since I've been here that all the projects that we planned for this year are completed or underway, which feels pretty good. We'll look at the project highlights just to review some of the things that we did this year. We did a structural spray of the stadium track and resurfacing of both South Middle School and Lakewood Middle School tracks. We did almost a full retrofit on the Cottonwood and Sunset roofs. We are really, really close to being done with the asbestos abatement and upgrades at the BOE building. In fact, folks are starting to move in. We did full electronic entry control at Meadowlark Ridge, Oakdale, Schilling, Sunset, Hughesner, and Stewart. We did flooring replacements in 9 classrooms at Hughesner, Meadowlark Ridge, Schilling, South High School, and Central High School. And we installed new turf at the Coronado Playground.
Mr. Upson, is there a slide we could look at that shows this?
You can't see the slides?
Oh, I'm only seeing the front page. Are other people seeing
wait,
more
hold
than
on.
that?
Technical difficulties.
Oh, okay. I can see the small versions on the left, but only the front page is in the big spot.
Are you seeing the agenda now?
No.
No.
There. No. Now we're seeing mountains.
What's everybody seeing now?
Front page?
Front page.
Okay.
There. Now
Agenda.
we're seeing the agenda.
Okay.
Yeah.
How about project highlights?
Yes.
Yes,
Very good.
got it.
There's your slide. I'll give you guys a moment to take a peruse this slide. Sorry about that.
So those are all the ones you just read off to us, right?
Yes, these are all the completed projects from fiscal year 20.
Thank you.
We've got them broken down here as a percentage of the total expenses total capital improvement expenses for the year.
Okay. We're good to go now.
Okay, moving on. Fiscal year 21 priorities. Our capital improvement priorities have been the same for many years. First and foremost is safety of students and staff. Second priority is protection of district assets. The third priority is delivery of programs. And the fourth priority is aesthetics. So what we end up with typically is a blending of these 4 priorities throughout the year in our plans. The first priority, safety of students and staff, 99% of the time, these are projects that are completed before they never really make it to the capital improvement plan. We solve those as they happen. It's that much of our priority that we do that. So the summary of the 21 plan, we can see that we have it broken down into special projects, buildings and grounds, and roofing. You noticed that last year we had many more categories than that. This year we're taking on the new warehouse that we're building it for $1.7 million. In addition, there is some budget uncertainty about what's going to happen with the state funding, and we thought it prudent to reel the capital improvement plan back in as far as we could, while still protecting our assets. We need to do the warehouse because of the circumstances with the tech school and the transfer of property that will happen after the litigation is concluded. And we need to make room for being able to vacate the building that we have over there.
Mr. Upson, what
Yes.
are there projects that used to be on this chart that were taken off?
So the capital improvement plan, and Ms. Exline and I had a discussion about this days ago. The capital improvement plan is supposed to be a 5-year plan, and the software spits it out as a 5-year plan, is kind of why it's a 5-year plan. Typically, we end up with a really solid plan the first year. So our fiscal year 21 in this case will be detailed and imminently going to happen. The second and third year become less and less detailed. And occasionally for projects, we'll end up with a projects in year 4 or year 5 of that plan. But it's a rolling plan, meaning that every year we rewrite the plan based on last year's plan, and we change it as we need to change it. So the projects that we had slated for this year that were in the plan last year, most of them got moved to the next fiscal year. I think that answers your question. So there were projects on here for fiscal year 21 last year that we have moved to out years.
Thank you. Go ahead.
So our one special project is our new warehouse that'll be located at the 1835 South Broadway site. For roofing, I'll talk about roofing briefly. About every 3 years, I'm shooting for every 3 years, we hire a third-party consultant that inspects all of the roofs in the district. There's 2 million square feet of roofing, and we have them inspect all of our roofs and prepare for us a report that gives their recommendations on roofs that need to be repaired, where exactly those repairs are at, roofs that could be due for replacement. So they give us that plan, and we build our capital improvement plan with respect to the roofs around that plan. So last year we had this consultant come and do another round. This is the second round for them that they've done our roof inspections, and Mother Nature gets a vote in circumstances and how our roofs perform. So it's not uncommon to have their recommendations from 3 years ago be different from their recommendations today. And so roofs tend to be one of those things that we can plan 5 years from now based on a plan that we build today. But 5 years from now, the circumstances might be different. So I think it's a good idea to have those roofs inspected about every 3 years so that we can make sure that we're spending money wisely and not replacing a roof that doesn't need to be replaced, or replacing a roof that we would have prioritized lower than a different roof. So that's what we find here. These miscellaneous roof repairs are as a result of a report that RSI did, the company that inspects our roofs. And they comb through every square feet of all of our roofs, and they give us a laundry list of $500 repairs that need to be made here and there, and there's dozens and dozens and dozens of them. But we find that it really prolongs the life of our roof, and we don't end up with a catastrophic problem. We prevent those catastrophic problems, which allows us to budget more appropriately. So what you see here is a list of the schools that we're going to touch with those miscellaneous roof repairs this year. Then as far as grounds go, structural spray of South High School track. You noted that last fiscal year, we completed a structural spray of the stadium track. The South High track is in need of a structural spray. This is basically the rubber surface that the red colored rubbered surface that goes on the surface of the track. Underneath that is asphalt. And if you don't protect that asphalt with that rubber coating, your asphalt will deteriorate. And what is about an $85,000 to $90,000 structural spray turns into hundreds of thousands of dollars for a brand new track. So we feel like protecting the asset that really needs to be structurally sprayed so we can prolong the life of the track at South High. The resurfacing of Central High School tennis courts. I'll be honest with you, I got to thinking about this when when the tennis folks started talking about tennis and the state of affairs with the city's tennis courts, et cetera. And it's time to do that so that we don't end up in a situation where our tennis courts are deteriorated so bad that we have to completely replace them. In addition to these grounds projects, I would like to mention that we've had talks about the baseball enterprises and the partnership that we were attempting to form with Salina Baseball Enterprises and the city of Salina and Kansas Wesleyan University to contribute to the turfing of baseball and softball fields at East Crawford Rec area. That project or that concept has changed pretty dramatically in light of the COVID situation and the city's finances. So the city is not interested in pursuing that project at this time, which is understandable. Baseball Enterprises has approached me and USD 305 to try to reimagine that project to make use of the funding that they have already received by donation. What that looks like for USD 305 currently is they would like to, the Salina Baseball Enterprises would like to help us turf the softball fields at South High School. And that would mean one completely turfed softball field and one field that the infield only would be turfed. In addition to that, we would provide bathroom facilities and stadium seating and lighting and extend the outfield fence to make it playable for college softball. There's much more to follow on that. We have tentatively scheduled a work session for the June 9th board meeting where we'll get into the details of this project. I wanted to mention it because it's not currently listed on our grounds project because you all haven't seen it yet and approved it, but that's coming June 9th. Are there any questions on the planned projects for this year?
Mark.
So, Mr. Upson, my question goes back actually to the first part of the presentation initially, and then I want to go forward. I'm curious on the Coronado Elementary playground replacement. I know that's
Yes.
already done, but is the turf there similar to what's on like a football field or what you're talking about for the baseball fields here? Is it a similar project or is it a different type of turf? And also, just out of curiosity, do you know roughly how many square feet that playground covers?
The first question you asked is the turf, it is similar, but it's not the same. That turf is, the turf that you select is based on the wearing that you anticipate of that turf. So that turf would be not as more durable than what was there before that we replaced, but not as durable as a turf that you would put on a football field. So it's very similar, but different. And I don't have the square footage in front of me right now, but I can certainly get that for you.
It's not a panic. I'm just curious in general, but that makes good sense. I thank you for that explanation. And Madam President, may I continue?
Yes.
So my second question goes back to the Central High tennis court piece. Is the surface that's there the original from when those were built, or have they been resurfaced somewhere along the line, or do you know on that?
I'm 90% sure that that's the original surface, but I can't say for certain. It hasn't been resurfaced in the 6 years that I've been here.
Does anyone know how old those tennis courts are? They seem really new to me, but my memory goes way back, so. Anybody know?
I'm going to
Okay.
find out the answers to those questions.
Okay. I wanted to say to the board members, for a while I could only see 3 of your faces, and now I've rearranged my screen so I can see all 7 board members. So if you raised your hand at some point and didn't get recognized during the screen sharing, I fixed it so I can see you now. Mark.
Sorry to dominate the floor. Nan, you spoke earlier to what I wonder about, which is the restructuring of priorities based on anticipated budget implications. I mean, at present, everything that's proposed makes perfect sense. And I recognize that through Ms. Peters' leadership and just great planning over the years, most of these funds already exist. But I want us to be prudent and cautious that if all heck breaks loose in Topeka and the budget really changed significantly, I appreciate you all continuing to discuss and bring forth recommendations back to us on best ways to juggle. Everything you've presented here, Mr. Upson, makes perfect sense. And clearly, if the roofs don't work, we're going to break all kinds of other things. So maintaining roofs is a top priority, especially a flat roof like we have to do in some of these larger structures. But I'm getting nervous about budgets from everything I hear from Topeka, and just want us to keep on having those good discussions.
Thank you. All right, back to you, Mr. Upson.
Okay, the next slide I have for you is our set aside balances. So if we have presented a 5-year plan, and I've talked to you about that plan becomes less and less detailed in the out years 3, 4, and 5. So how do we account for things that we know we're going to need? And the way that we account for those and plan for those is by way of set aside accounts, which are essentially savings accounts that the business office has set up in collaboration with my office on what things will cost in the future. And we save capital improvement dollars every year for eventualities. So as you look at this chart, you can see what we have saved in those accounts thus far. And on the left side, you can see how much we set aside each year to go into these accounts to fund things. So we've got technology at $500,000 a year. These do sometimes fluctuate. Usually they increase as we get more technology. We need to save more to replace the more technology that we have. As we get more and more turf, we have to save more each year to replace that turf. Roofing at $300,000 a year. The temporary set aside for baseball and softball at $250,000 a year until we reach the $1 million. HVAC at $150,000 a year. Tennis courts, we have not saved anything yet, but we're planning $125,000 a year beginning this year until we reach $500,000 for a conceptual project at South High, at Jerry Ivy Park. And then turf at $80,000 a year. But you can see the balances that we're carrying right now on the right side of your screen on that chart. And this is for, we can plan to replace HVAC units, and we do that. But each year things happen and things change. And so those priorities might shift. And the way we account for those is by saving money so that we have the capital to do that. Are there any questions about the set aside accounts? What about any questions overall? Mark?
I just want to again applaud the good fiscal planning over the years to have those funds available. It's not every district does that, and I appreciate your all's leadership pulling those things together. I have no specific questions. It's good planning, and I just hope the budget situation allows us to keep on doing that.
I also want to say that I'm always impressed. I've seen the strategic plan, or not the strategic plan, this plan that you're presenting to us. I've seen it go by several years in a row, and I'm always impressed about how we are planning so far ahead for the things that we know will go wrong, but it's easy to ignore them because they're so far in the future. So I think it's great that that you continue to keep up this list of future needs.
In a perfect world, my dream would be that we would never have to pass a bond issue, which I don't know if we'll ever get there, but we can get close. And I would really hate to do bond issues to fix roofs. And some districts have to do that, which is just, you just can't even see the fruit of that. So it's really hard to sell the public on those sorts of things. So my goal really is to chip away at these items and this work so that we don't get into such a bad situation that we are forced to have to try to pass a bond issue.
And Majority, I'd like to thank you too for all your strategic planning and looking out for emergencies and being able to accommodate those when they come up. So thank you very much, Chris.
You're welcome.
So if there are no more questions on this, was somebody talking, or was that you, Chris?
Yeah, I was just going to reiterate that this was the first reading of the plan, and the board will see it again June 9th. Any tweaks or changes will be highlighted, and we'll talk about those at the time. And
Thank you.
I welcome any questions that you have on it.
Thank you. And so now we are with you again, Mr. Epson, for technology one-to-one.
Yes. USD 305 administration would like to move the district to a more permanent one-to-one configuration for grades K through 12. And when I say one-to-one, I mean each student is assigned a Chromebook that's theirs to use. Given the COVID-19 pandemic, the need to be flexible and agile is ever present. While we can't determine the course of the virus in the long term, we can say that COVID-19 has taught USD 305 much about what we need to be better prepared for any uncertainties. True one-to-one grades K through 12 is of primary importance from a hardware standpoint. As the last many weeks have shown, those little Chromebooks can be the gateway to continuing education for our students when traditional classroom instruction is not possible. Since one-to-one became a thing nationally, USD 305 has had the far-reaching goal to provide this level of technology to our students and teachers. Achievement of this goal began with establishing one-to-one grades 9 through 12 6 years ago. Since that time, grades K through 8 schools have slowly been purchasing Chromebooks out of their local budgets, and in many cases as gifts from their respective parent-teacher organizations. Indeed, we were only able to launch the district's continuous learning plan to the level we did because our schools have seen and acted on the need for technology in the classroom, and because our high school one-to-one program is robust, funded, and forward-thinking. We wanted to make you aware that over the coming weeks, USD 305 administration will analyze our current Chromebook inventory and lay out a plan to implement a true one-to-one configuration for grades K through 12. This is a high priority project that is essential to long-term preparedness, and we'll return to you later on this summer with our recommended plan. We wanted to let you know that that was in the works and we're going to plan on it. Any questions about the one-to-one?
Mark?
So I know part of the plan this year is to allow the graduating seniors to keep their Chromebooks. How old are those? And will the plan just basically replace those as people grow as well?
The plan is many faceted. I'll speak to the senior Chromebooks right now. The seniors right now, their Chromebooks were brand new when they were freshmen. So they're 4 years, they're getting on the end of 4 years. And the agreement to allow them to keep their Chromebooks was made when they were freshmen. The thinking being maybe the students will take better care of their Chromebooks if we promise that they can keep those Chromebooks after they graduate.
And that turned out to be the case, isn't that correct?
Dwight can probably speak to that, but I do think that we are better than most of our surrounding districts in one-to-one and broken stuff.
Yes, two things we did along that lines was we went with a little bit more expensive device, but we're able to get a 4-year warranty on it. So that if something does happen to it, unless extreme or a student does it repeatedly, we're not out any additional money. The other part is when we start looking at numbers, that ownership that we give our students on those Chromebooks, I believe, has been the major reasons that we see so much lower damage and failure rates in our surrounding and really nationwide districts. When I check with other districts, the norms are somewhere in the 15 to 20% destroyed or failed rate every year, and we're down around 4 to 5%. So we're definitely doing something right. But most of it, I believe, is because those students know that they're going to have that same Chromebook for 4 years. And so they really want to take care of it. They don't like working with poor equipment. So they really take care of it.
Did that answer your question, Mark? Yes. Okay. I guess if there aren't any more questions about the one-to-one technology, we'll go on to the next item on the agenda. Thank you, Mr. Upson. Thank you, Mr. Christie.
Thank you.
And the next on the agenda is the 2020-2021 handbooks for elementary, middle, and high school. And that's Ms. Rector.
Good evening. My name is Shanna Rector. I'm the Executive Director of Administrative and Student Support Services, and I do have several with me tonight, different administrators from the buildings who are representing and available if we have additional questions. What I will do is I'll go ahead and go through each of the handbook changes, and then I will stop after each level and then see if there are any questions. So let me go ahead and share my screen. Is everyone able to see my screen?
Yes.
Good. Okay, so first we're going to start with the elementary student handbook. And just to give you a little bit of background, the building principals do look at these handbooks each and every year and really kind of focus in on areas that they know that there's changes, or if they've run across anything during the school year that they would like to make sure is clarified for the next year. And so we don't look at so you're not seeing the entire handbook tonight, you're just seeing the areas where we do have changes. And so when I go through this, we have a chart that basically shows you which page number the handbook is on, the change is on, and then also kind of the rationale for that wording. And at the elementary level, we just have one handbook for all of our elementary buildings. And so the first one that we have here is just general kindergarten information. And each year we have a pre-enrollment, and this year we usually, it happens in the spring, and so it is going to be moved to the summer. And so we will be advertising information on that, but we did want to adjust our handbook to take out that each spring to show that we have a pre-enrollment.
Shanna?
Yes?
So is that somebody's tornado siren, or what is that noise?
Did I have the noise again? We thought we got it solved last time. So let me see if I can. I checked my audio right before we got started, and there was no sound.
I see. Okay, so that's just your computer somehow.
Yeah. I'm going to shut everything off around me. Does that help?
Well, yes, but we can't see your face, so. It does. It's a little better now, yes.
With the light off?
It doesn't, I don't think the light makes the difference. There's something made a difference though.
Okay, so we do have something that makes a difference. Okay, it may have been the background radio for the schools. That might be the culprit. Okay.
Okay.
So you can't hear me okay now?
Well, I don't know. How's everybody else? It's kind of distant. It's much lower than it was before. So it's off now.
Okay.
Now it's on, but not as loud. Okay. I think it'll be fine.
Safety to and from school was the next one. And so on this one, we just added some additional wording to kind of just reiterate the expectation is for parents to drop their students off at the curb to promote safety. We have inclement weather closing is the next section in the elementary, and this is just to reflect the information that is available on the website and to also make sure that we've added additional information in regards to the 2-hour delayed start. This next section is about visitors, and working with Aaron Wright, we wanted to make sure that we had the appropriate information in here because principals do need to recognize, we want our families to feel welcome at our schools, but we also have some guidelines here to kind of help reiterate the expectations to parents as they visit schools. This next section is about administrating medication, and so our school nurses worked with the information that they had to update this, especially within for medications, and making sure that the parents had all the information that they needed whenever we're going to be administering medications at school. And we are very fortunate to have our nurses in our building to be able to help us with this aspect. So those are the changes for the elementary handbook. Do I have any questions?
I think we're all good. Next.
So next we have the middle school handbook. And so within this middle school handbook, the 2 middle schools actually each have their own handbook at Lakewood and at South Middle. And, you know, as over time, those handbooks, we work on getting them closer and closer, but there is a little bit of kind of building flair per se that may be a little bit different in some of the wording. And so that's why you see there may be 2 sections on here of where Lakewood or South Middle may have slightly different wording. And so we are working on that to look at what we have this year under each different section and to see where we need to reflect current practice and also to make sure that we are illustrating what is happening at the schools. So we will start with the Lakewood Middle School, and it is with the daily procedures. And with the daily procedures, we see that we are just kind of clarifying book bags and making just some general clarifications there. They're not really using gym bags any longer. The next aspect is with South Middle School, and again, just kind of updating that wording in regards to book bags. When we look at Lakewood, we see that they have a tardy sweep section, and they no longer are using that tardy sweep mechanism, and so that is outdated current practice, or outdated practice, excuse me. And so we wanted to make sure that we got that section removed. Then with Lakewood Middle School, we had an athletic section that talked about a participation fee that we are no longer charging, and that is true at both Lakewood and South Middle. So we have corrected the information that's in those 2 handbooks. Lakewood Middle School still had bus policies that showed that there was a daily bus pass that is no longer being used at that school. And so we wanted to make sure that we removed that section. Lakewood Middle School had a STANG support center that is kind of from kind of a current process, or excuse me, a previous process that they were using that is no longer in place. And so we have removed that section. Then we see that we have information from the school nurse again. So Lakewood and South Middle actually will have the same language. So we took out their previous language and put in the information from the middle school nurses, which is very similar to what we see in both the elementary and the high school. And we see that same wording there then going into South Middle School as well. And then we have Lakewood Middle School and South Middle, their inclement weather school closing. So this is new wording for their particular handbooks, but it is information that we will see consistent between elementary, middle school, and high school to show kind of our current practice and also to identify the delayed start. And then Lakewood Middle School eligibility, looking at the language that Mrs. Exline spoke to earlier in regards to eligibility and that first quarter of their 7th grade year, that we need to introduce that language into the handbook. So we have it introduced here in the Lakewood Middle School area. And then we also have it introduced in the South Middle School area. And then I did catch that earlier, Mr. Gardner had mentioned that we have an inconsistency between these two areas in regards to quarter and semester. And so we will make sure that we adjust that as well and get that fixed and make that common practice across those buildings. And so that is the end of the middle school handbooks. Do we have any questions?
I have a question about, oh, Jim, just a minute. Sorry. When did the activity fee end?
Actually, it's ended a couple of years ago, and it looks like it may have, maybe we changed the policy and the handbooks were already approved and we didn't catch it last year. So it is something that actually got moved out, I think, 2 years ago.
Thank you. Jim?
Ms. Rector, when I look at eligibility on Lakewood versus South, the first sentence appears to be different.
Okay.
At Lakewood, it says that the student must be passing 5 subjects of unit weight on a biweekly basis. How does that differ from the South Middle School sentence?
I think that when you're looking at that, the unit weight seems to be an extra kind of descriptor that we probably need to make sure that, I don't know if our middle school students would understand unit weight, so we probably need to look at making that consistent across the buildings. Thank you for that information. We will look at that with the 2 principals. Either principal from either middle school, is there something that you would like to comment on that? Any additional information?
No, I believe they're the same thing.
Okay, Mark?
I agree. They're the same thing. It's just, I think we could probably take out unit weights. It wouldn't have to be in there. It's just they need to be passing 5 classes.
Okay.
I was just going to comment in on your statement about the fees. My son was a senior. He graduated in December 2016. And that fall 2016 was the only semester of high school we didn't have to pay the activity fee. So I think 16-17 year was when that was eliminated.
Thank you. Okay. Ms. Scott?
Sam, I would also just suggest just to read through it again. Also, if you look at on page 62, South Middle School, it calls out the actual coverage for the policy for the insurance. In Lakewood, there is no requirement as far as the dollar figure for that. So we're not exactly saying the same thing as far as the requirement for insurance. So there's just a number of those discrepancies throughout that part of the document. And I'm sure it's just a flair for writing, but it might be something we want to review.
All right. I'm having a little trouble understanding you, Scott, but it sounds like Ms. Rector is understanding you. Are you understanding what he's saying?
Yes, I am. And
okay.
What I'm hearing is that we need to look at that section in much more detail. And so I will be getting the 2 principals together and we will look at those sections and make sure that we have the wording consistent and that we have the correct wording in there. So we will work on that and make sure that we have that available when we bring it back in June.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. You're welcome.
All right. Any other questions about middle school? I think that's it. So go ahead, Ms. Rector.
Okay. And I'm assuming that you're seeing my screen move, correct?
Yes, we are.
Okay, good. And so with the handbooks at the high school, again, we're looking at trying to create consistency on language, updating anything that may no longer be current practice, reflect what we anticipate to be happening in 2021. And so really when we think about high school, when we think about cuts and tardies and all of those fun things that administrators get to deal with, I think that when I was a principal at every single ABCTL meeting that we ever had, we always had a breakout session about tardies and cut policies. And I don't think out of all of those years, we ever found that we didn't need to talk about that subject. So each year we look at cuts and tardies. And so we had another exciting year again to look at that. And one of the things that we really worked on this year is to try to create some consistency and move things around a little bit to maybe make that a little bit more obvious to students. And so you're going to see that we're talking about cut policy first. And between both South and Central, there were slight variations in how they were working with their cuts. And when we think about how did that happen, a lot of times when we're looking at like some of the different, input from teacher groups, things like that, sometimes we will see that over time, each building has been addressing something that best fits their building. But as we think about our students and how much more cross students that we have going back and forth between South and Central, we think that it is very pertinent that we get onto the same page to provide consistency for our students, and also so that way they can, know what those expectations are no matter which building they are attending. And so with the cut policy, we did go ahead and add some wording there and move the consequences to the discipline section, but then got rid of some of that wording that was inside that area. So we'll see adjustments to both Central and South, but what you will notice is that they have basically that first part has become consistent, and later on in the document, I will show you where it's become consistent in the discipline chart as well. Then we have tardiness. And again, we are addressing this to make sure that our students have something that they know is the same for both buildings. And so we have changed the Central High School policy and the South High School policy to be consistent. And so that wording has been changed. And you'll see that within that wording, it is basically the same. There's a little bit of slight difference in the sense that one building has how they kind of process it within the building is a little different, but the actual measurement that they're using is the same. And so then we go to the discipline chart, and you'll see where we've updated and we've put some information in there regarding tardies and cuts for our students to see that information. And you'll see that tardies is, we don't start on the first tardy there because there is that teacher piece to tardies in classes and the monitoring of what's happening from class to class. We rely very heavily on our teachers to help us support expectations across our building. And then, so then you'll see that Central High School wanted to add a little bit more of a definition into the beginning of their handbook. And so they have some wording there, and South High School did support that wording. And so both buildings have seen that wording, and that is in addition to Central High School. We see that we have a change in lunches. This is kind of taking some of that old language that we had in regards to what we had offerings, and it kind of goes back even to some of the way that the building was designed. We had some change differences in each building. And so what you're going to see is that this kind of at Central's a little bit of reduction in wording, and then also some establishment of the same type of wording that you'll see at both Central and South High School in regards to lunches, and then also in regards to kind of just general information about menus and so forth. Then we're going to see a new section about for Central and South High School, just electronic communication, just trying to encourage parents to reach out through emails. And then you're going to see also some encouragement to parents about Skyward and student process, reminding them that Skyward is there, but also reminding the students that this is a good place for our students to get information, our parents to get information. Then you see that we removed the policy regarding sneak day. And the principals brought this forward because they said, you know what, even the mention of sneak day in the handbook makes it seem as if this is a day that is condoned. Really, our attendance policy and our expectations for excused and unexcused absences really speaks to when a student is not present, when they don't have permission, or when their location is unknown. So we took this entire section out because they really did feel that just the mention of sneak day was kind of almost promoting it or putting it out there as something that is a sanctioned aspect, and it is not sanctioned. And then we see detention room guidelines. Central High School is no longer using a centralized room for that. And so really the expectations and guidelines that they have in the locations where they have detentions, and they have information provided to students in regards to that detention location. And so they wanted to remove this generality so there was no confusion. Then we look at semester eligibility. And so this is that additional wording that we are adding from that change in policy that Mrs. Exline spoke to earlier, the Athletic Handbook. We have added it in for the 9th grade students. And then we see some information that just needs to be cleaned up a little bit. The student class loads at South High School, just changing that to current practice and calling it a full class schedule. They no longer have 7 hours. And block schedule, students are assigned to a daily ELO. That has also been updated. It was not updated last year in South High School's book. And so we have similar language in Central High Schools that's already showing current practice. And so those two are now essentially the same. And then we see Central High School and South High School adding the terminology for inclement weather, again, getting that information that's similar to both the elementary and the middle school handbooks. And then we have some changes to the health office or the nurse section. And so there's some clarification of where that nurse area is, and then also that updated language from our nurses. And so you see there's changes in both South and Central handbook. And that brings me, I think, to the end. And so are there any questions in regards to the high school handbooks?
Mark?
Just one quick comment and then an overall question. The comment is, isn't it fun how many more rules we need the older we get? Comparing the elementary handbook to the high school handbook.
We get much more specific, don't we?
Yes, for sure. But it's great work. I appreciate the effort people have put into this. And as I've said on several occasions, you all are the ones that have to work with these things. And it makes sense to me if the principals and assistant principals are comfortable with it, then I'm sure things are heading in the right direction. My overall question, not just for the high school, but for all three, is how do we convey this information to the non-English speakers, especially where the students may speak English, but the parents don't? I'm sure we don't convert all these things to Spanish or something else, but how do we help those situations?
Actually, all of our handbooks are converted to Spanish. And so we don't necessarily have a print version that we do for all families, but we can make a print version for them. And then this is available on our website. And so parent information link, it takes them to each handbook. And then also on the building websites, there's a link to parent information that takes them to the handbooks. So we do have these translated into Spanish each and every year.
Thank you. Emma, did you have something? Jim will be next.
Okay, my only question was on the cut policy. Is there some other verbiage you can use besides cut policy, or is that just used nationwide?
Well, I think it's used nationwide. I mean, at least in this, in our area, cut is that's one of the reasons why we defined it. And
okay.
So I think living in a high school, I think cut is the word that we all use. High school principals, assistant principals, do you want to jump in there?
Okay, that's fine. I just was questioning the word cut policy. So thank you. That's
Emma,
fine.
We know you never cut while you were in high school, right?
Right. Thank you.
Tim?
Yes, Madam President. Ms. Richter, and this kind of goes back to the question I asked on the middle school section on page 74 under the semester eligibility. This is where we're putting the new wording in there for the CASHA piece. And I see here that it has subjects of unit weight in the previous semester listed again. And I guess maybe I'm looking for clarification so that I'm understanding the process here. And I guess as I'm thinking through this, would this be a situation where maybe a student was an aide, an office aide or something like that, and received credit for that, or received credit for class? And I guess a unit weight class, is that something like, how are we defining that, I guess, is maybe the piece that I'm looking for.
And Jim, actually, I think that you just hit the nail on the head. The unit weight terminology is in regards to a credit-bearing class. And so if a student was enrolled, like say at high school, and they were in an aid class, a teacher aide that did not get a grade, because we do have some non-graded classes, and so those would not count towards eligibility. And so that is what I believe that unit weight is referring to there. But that really brings to light that we may need to have some clarification or some definition there, so that way our families and our students really understand what that means. So thank you for asking that question, and let me work on with the principals at both the middle school and the high school to make sure that we have that clearly defined for our families.
Thank you.
So in any class, I mean, I guess about unit weight, this is Anne. It wouldn't be like an elective doesn't count, or is it five serious classes, or go ahead.
They need to be in any class that earns a grade. And so when you look at some of more of the details of the eligibility, they need to earn a grade, they need to be earning a credit. And so the credit would be at the high school level is what you're looking at there. So I believe that is what that reference is, and maybe one of the high school principals might want to jump in if I am misspeaking. So it's been a while since I've thought about it in those terms, but I'm really, when Jim mentioned that came right to my mind, is that is the reason why we had that designation in there. But I do think that we need to clarify that.
Thank you.
Shannon, this is Julie Falcon. They are talking about that, and it's laid out pretty defined in the CASHA rules of the unit weight, and that's probably where that wording has transferred from, is those CASHA rules. So it defines it also when you're looking at if you're taking an extended study class at the college level. Some of that wording we probably need to look at 7 through 12 or 6 through 12, just so that we're the same. And if we're having questions like this because we live it and we're not looking at it from the outside lens, maybe that is something we need to look at the wording on and clarify it, so there's not the misconception for students, parents, or patrons.
Thank you so much, Julie. And that's one of the reasons too that having these outside eyes look at our handbook, board members, is so beneficial to us, because like Julie said, sometimes we live it and we don't necessarily define it for everyone as clearly as we should. So that will be something we'll look at the CASHA, and there may be some athletic handbook information too that might spell it out for us a little bit. So we'll make sure that we work on getting some clarification in that section.
Thank you. I think Mark had another question.
Not a question. I was just going to mention that in part of my role at Bethany, I serve as the registrar. And when we bring in transfer credit, this same type of thing is something we have to look really carefully at. The National Association of Intercollegiate Athletics has rules about we have to accept the class for it to count towards athletic eligibility. For example, some of our California junior college transfers at their home school will get academic credit for varsity athletics. We don't accept that. So defining that thing and having the verbiage listed correctly is really an important thing. So it's a good catch, Jim. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. Ms. Exline, was that a raised hand or just a scratched head? Okay, just scratching her head. Thank you, Ms. Rector. I think that's all, and I guess you'll be back next meeting to present it for a vote.
Yes, I will be back on June 9th for the action agenda.
Thank you then very much. That takes us to the end of our discussion agenda. And next on the agenda is the school board reports and upcoming dates of importance, which include the radio graduations on Sunday, May 17th, 2020 on 99 KG, FM 99.9. Central High School is at 2 o'clock and South High School is at 5 o'clock. I think it's really wonderful that the radio station is doing that. I heard the interview between Ms. Exline and their DJ, I can't remember his name, but he was talking about how he was a pretty mediocre student in high school, but when it came to graduation, he just found it a total thrill to get to walk across the stage and shake somebody's hand and get his diploma. And so he is pretty enthusiastic about helping the seniors have a graduation on the date that they were supposed to get to do that. So I'm going to go through the list in alphabetical order again to see if anyone has reports. So Mark?
Just real quickly, the Salina Education Foundation, part of my other assignments, no further report. For Parks and Recreation, we learned yesterday that our May meeting is now canceled as well. That means we haven't met since February. I asked yesterday, we also haven't had a report of any sort during that time. So I asked Mr. Cotton if he could have the staff pull together at least some kind of a report so we have some update what's going on. As I'm sure all are somewhat aware, Parks and Rec is heavily affected by the city budget issues going on right now as well. Mr. Cotton did say yesterday that Parks and Rec is not able to hire any seasonal workers at all. And pretty much their full-time employees are now the people out running the lawnmowers as well. So if you're seeing any places around town that Parks and Rec normally mows and you're seeing either dead rows lying there or the grass a lot longer than we might prefer, that's one of the budget realities we're all dealing with. So that's really all I have this time around.
Thank you. Emma?
I will be attending the Smoky Hill Education Service Zoom meeting Thursday evening, and the school nurse district USD 305 school nurse meeting was canceled, of course. And so till further notice, we will get together with the school nurses, but that's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Jim?
Yes, we had a Heartland meeting last week, and we went through the grant pieces and things like that were approved today during our meeting. They're still working on getting some programming together, working with partner agencies and other counties and things like that. But they're still doing the work. I expressed there, and I'll express here, I'm very proud of our staff, our parents, our administration, our students, everybody who's come together to make these adaptions and go on through the year. I think we've done a great job compared to some of the other places we've seen out there.
Thank you. Scott, Scott, sorry, Scott. I'm sorry, did you say no report? Yes, okay. Gabe?
No report.
Dana?
No report.
Okay.
And you're muted.
Oh, I think I know how I did that by accident. Thank you. I've been attending webinars on equity in schools on Wednesdays, and they've been quite interesting. They have superintendents and educational specialists from across the country, and there are just a few things I'll make note of here from what I was hearing. They were talking about the kids that you lose track of during the school year who you don't have very close relations with. And those are also the ones that you will lose track of when you do distance learning. So the more we can build those relationships during the time when we're together, when the students are with the teachers and with the schools, the better you'll be when if you come down to some emergency like we have. Another thing was that the summer slide that the teachers often talk about has been compounded by the disrupted fourth quarter, and it does hit the vulnerable students the hardest. Kids that weren't very closely connected to the school for whatever reason, they're going to slide more than the other kids. One suggestion of one of the principals, I think from Dallas, was that now that we have this whole distance learning that we're getting used to some extent, we can go on possibly to a place where if a student is absent, they can still be in school, so that as long as they're at home or somewhere with a device or a computer, they could tap into the classroom and while they're not able to be in class. So all of these principles are saying we can't just go back to usual, the old normal once we get done with this. And we have to make sure that we are keeping connected with all the students, regardless of their challenges in life. I guess the only other report I have is that I did listen to Ms. Exline on the radio as much as I could. And it's always fun to hear that. So thank you, Ms. Exline, for doing those and for keeping us informed of when you're going to be doing that. That's my report. So we'll go on to the superintendent's report.
Okay, I just have a couple things. Thank you for the kind words, Anne. I wanted to update you on our continuous learning survey results. And one of the things over and over and over on those results was a deep appreciation for how hard our teachers work and an appreciation for all the extra that our staff is doing for families. Multiple comments of thanks about our food service programming and continuing to provide meals for our students in the community. The flexible schedule people liked. They're feeling good that we made a decision and moved forward and implemented quickly. I'm very appreciative of the technology and our emphasis on equal access. The priority that USD 305 put on making sure that we weren't creating a situation where some students didn't have access. And so appreciative of the internet access that you voted to provide. There were some things that we could learn to grow, and that's one of the reasons that we did the survey, was to try to find out where do we need to get better. One of the things that we heard is we have some families that are really craving additional structure, and so that schooling helps with that. The amount of time that kids are in school helps provide that structure, and so that was one thing that we heard. Another thing that we heard was that for working families, that this is challenging, and the understanding what the lengths that teachers go to prepare education for students, and just the amount of time and engagement that takes. Our families are certainly appreciative of what teachers do, but are saying for some of our families that has been a challenge for them. They are really interested in that social interaction, multiple comments about how students are missing that social interaction with the teacher and with peers. And that I heard multiple times, you can't replace being in school with kids. And I think we would, with a teacher and with students in the classroom, and I think we would all agree that the best case scenario is that students are in a classroom with a highly trained teacher getting high quality instruction every day. So I will share more specific results as we've had time to compile those, but I just wanted to give you a little bit. And I do want to just reiterate that thanks to our staff, because I think that for families, the teachers, that's what makes the difference, the teachers and staff that are working right with them. And so we just can't say enough how important that is. The other thing that I wanted to tell you is I did get to hear a teaser of the graduation that will be happening on Sunday. Some of the voice work that had been done with the voiceover person that 99KG works with. I'm really excited to have students experience that and for them to be able to have a copy of what has been created. And I really want to thank the community partners who have helped make that possible. A huge thank you to 99KG and to Shane McClintock for the work on that. And so I hope that you'll get a chance to catch that this weekend. And then the last thing is on budget. The federal government still has not approved our state, our governor, using budget dollars that came out of the CARES funding to backfill the budget. And what that means is our governor has some difficult decisions ahead because we have to end the year with a balanced budget. And as you know, I shared with you the consensus revenue estimates were down substantially. We anticipate that on the 20th or the 21st of this month, we will have some information about what the budget means for us. And so I'll be getting more information to you as we get more information from the state level on that. We are being cautious in purchases. We're being cautious in hiring and having conversations about each position that comes open, and really trying to make sure that we're making good decisions and that we're positioning the district in the best situation possible. I'm hopeful that federal legislation, that they will ease up on that and give Governor Kelly some more flexibility with how to use that money. But like I said, we should know something the 20th or the 21st about to make some more solid plans on how to move forward.
Thank you. Anything else? No. Then I will take a motion to adjourn. Jim,
President, I move we adjourn.
Gabe, you want to second it? He seconds it. And then all in favor? Well, Mark, what do you vote?
Mark Vandre, aye.
Emma?
Emma Doherty, aye.
Jim?
Jim Fletcher, aye.
Scott? Couldn't hear that, but I'm assuming you say aye.
Aye.
Good. Gabe?
Gabe Grant, aye.
Dana?
Dana Casso, aye.
And Ann Zimmerman votes aye. Motion carried 7-0. The meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much.